giving landscape of the digital economy, and Mr. Nag for sort of laying out a very specific example on how digitalization can help and facilitate change. And I'm going to sort of circle back and step back a little bit, talk to all of you about what the digitalization process actually means, right? So we take it for granted. We all hold our phones in our hand. And we sort of don't process what's happening on the backside, or maybe we think about it, but not so deeply about what could be the connect, or what we are doing with our handheld devices or with our technology. What could the implication be on equity, on inclusive growth? What are the connections, right? So I'm just going to sort of connect the dots and then say, why are we seeing these regulatory challenges, and what is it that we should expect to see over the next 1 or 2 years in terms of changes in the regulatory landscape? So of course, all of us are users, avid users of social media. We post so many things every single day. All of this lands up in some kind of cyberspace, and it gets backed up somewhere, right? We don't know who's taking this information, where is our information really sitting finally, and who's processing it to tell us what we should buy next. And this is a very convoluted, seemingly convoluted process which is distributed across the world. Many of you may have heard over the last few years that there are companies like Google, Amazon that are paying very low taxes. So I remember way back in 2016, 2017, the effective tax rate globally was about 2% for some of these large tech companies. And that actually got everyone angered that, you have budget deficits, you have countries struggling for money, but at the same time, these corporations, these large corporations, which almost are semi-government, they work at such a large scale, are not paying enough money as taxes. And that is the issue of inclusion while growth. And that is when civil society and media started asking questions on what do you do with these companies. Well, we still don't very well know what happens once we post something and where we make a call, where is this data located. But if you look at some of the cases, there's a very interesting detailing that companies like Google will give. For example, if you are in India, you're using it, some of it will go to Ireland for processing. This is very crudely speaking. It could be more complicated than this. There are these models that have been developed. So, for example, if you like to look at blue shoes, you're going to see some more of them in the advertisements because they've figured it out that this is something you'd like to purchase. This is something you're thinking about. And so this information gets processed and sent back to you. And what happens? At some point, you feel the urge to buy what you were thinking about, and that becomes money for another company. So it's a whole set of transactions that are taking place across the world, and it's generating profits at different stages. So, for example, we all like to purchase products from Amazon, which are on deep discount. Do we ever ask, where is the profit really landing on helping you buy these products? And that is the question that was being raised in policy over and over again. So are they paying taxes where they're located? And should they be paying taxes in India for just having a platform? Or should they be paying it in the US where they are headquartered? And that was the source of the tension. We've seen since 2018 this tension has only escalated. We have seen at global level, even the United States Treasury talking about we will find a fair way to tax the companies, but where are we in 2024? We're still very far away from an agreed solution. So India has, in the past, tried to tackle this problem to say, well, if you have operations here, if you're saying you have sales, then you might as well pay up a fraction of that as taxes in India. And of course, companies do not like to pay double the amount of tax. So some of these profits that they generate here were repatriated back to the headquarter countries. India sort of charged its tax, which was not being discounted for in the countries where the profit was repatriated. And then what did you have? You had this nice little interesting trade tension emerge. So the US said, I'll put retaliatory tariffs in response to these taxes. And that leads us to, should there be a global solution, which we're sitting far away from right now. But in the next 1 year, what we would see is that many countries will begin to align their processes on how to tax these companies. And that would mean a shift. That would mean a shift in terms of compliance. It would mean a shift in terms of even tax collections. And while this is an extremely boring topic on tax, right? But it relates to all of us, because today, if large companies pay lower taxes, it means at some point individuals will have to pay higher taxes. And we've always heard the grievance of individuals who are non-business income earners tend to pay more taxes than everybody else. This is sort of setting everything on the even ground. I think what has been more interesting as well in how we operate, how we deal or interact with the world, is that all of us are now also, financially transacting on digital platforms. And this has been spoken about by Professor Singh. You have different kinds of modes now to transact. But I think what has been a very interesting development, which is beyond us in understanding, is also the crypto space. So we've all heard about, crypto assets, especially after the Russia-Ukraine war. We saw that there was some propensity to buy these because these are opaque. Many of us ask questions on what is the value of a cryptocurrency, right? So what is it based on? And of course, a cryptocurrency could be different from a crypto asset. And it's led to the questions of transparency. So I think the other regulatory landscape to watch out for is that governments, at least in the G20, are super interested in knowing what is, what is the source of the money going into these assets or into these currencies, and where are they flowing, because they could essentially support illegal transactions. They could allow individuals to move incomes or assets across countries without being absolutely transparent about the whole transaction. So I think two big things related to the digital economy, which again speak to, on, as I mentioned earlier, which is on inclusivity, is whether we can tax companies appropriately, and the second one, of course, is on, can we make sure that everyone's being transparent about the transactions. And I think when we're talking about inclusivity and growth, and this is again may not be a regulatory issue now or immediately, but I think is for everyone to think about, is that the way of employment is changing, right? So many people ask the question of, will you have as many jobs if this were to fasten? So many of you have heard the ChatGPT has taken off. A lot of us go to ChatGPT to get some of our answers, and sometimes these can be sophisticated answers. And so the question is, will we need the same nature of employees? Will the number of employees remain the same across organizations, across sectors? And it can be quite disruptive, right? Because it raises back the question of inclusivity, which is, will you be able to employ your labor force as you do today? And secondly, if you can't, and these models or this knowledge is proprietary, it is owned by large companies, will we be able to raise taxes or personal income taxes the same way as we do today? So I think all of these issues come together, and I think this is something to ponder about, and I think the policymakers are already addressing some of these issues. But as we look at the digital space, it's going to evolve, and its landscape is going to evolve based on what we are seeing now. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Tandon.